All right, welcome back. So today we are going to actually jump into HTML and start learning the basics, the structure and everything. I'm probably going to end up talking about domains and web hosting for a bit, but we're still going to create our HTML document. Now it's actually very easy to create the HTML document we're going to work in. All you got to do is literally go into your files, and open the file where you're going to store all the files for your website. We made this folder in the last video, so I'm just going to open that one here. Now once you're in here, you just need to create the file. So if you recall from the last video, I mentioned HTML can literally be written in a simple text document or a text editor or notepad. So with that in mind, I'm just going to right click, hit new, and then hit text document. Now we need to name our document. For now, I'm just going to call it my_website and then end it off with .html. This of course just lets our computer know that this is an HTML file. There's also one thing you should keep in mind. Since we did basically just create a text document, if you don't have view file extensions enabled, Windows might actually still be treating this as a text document and not an HTML file, so it's actually a .txt file. So to check that, just look up here where it says view, go over to the right, and there's this option called file name extensions, and make sure that's checked. And once you check that, you'll see that it's actually a .txt file and it wasn't actually an HTML file. You should know that because the txt file has like a notepad kind of icon. And anyways, so if you right click it and hit rename, and then just remove the .txt so that it ends off with .html. Hit enter, and then you'll have this pop-up saying if you change the file name extension, the file will become unusable. Just hit yes, and now the icon will change from a text document to your default browser. And if it hasn't changed from a default browser, you just gotta right click, hit open with, and then your browser. Or you can also, and if it's not here, you just hit choose another app, and you can look for your browser. Now if you open this file, boom, it just opens up in the browser, and this is in fact our website. Now granted, the HTML file like we created was blank, so obviously there's going to be nothing here, but nonetheless this is our site. Now I want you to look up here at the URL. Well, it's not really a URL, it's a file path, and this file path is where the HTML file is stored. So I'm gonna talk about this for a bit. I want to clarify that this site or page cannot be accessed by anyone else unless they have this file. You can't copy this file path in the URL bar and give it to someone else to open, because of course they don't have the same files as you. Our browser is opening this page from our file explorer. So how do other websites work with their URLs? For example, how does the browser know to open the YouTube webpage when I type in youtube.com? Now, at heart, all websites have an HTML file stored somewhere. Ours, in this case, is on our computer and in a specific folder. If you want the world and other people to be able to access this specific HTML folder with your website in it, you'd have to host it on your computer, and your computer acts as a server that lets other people connect to it and open that file. Each server has a unique IP address, which helps you identify a computer's location on the web. And you would type that address into the URL bar, and it's a bunch of numbers separated by periods. And when you type that into the URL bar, your file would essentially open. Now, two things to note: if you thought about using your computer as a server to host your website, you probably shouldn't be letting random strangers connect to your computer and have access to your IP. And second, you'd need to have your computer running at all times 24/7, because when your computer turns off, your server turns off, and as a result, your website goes offline. So to publish your website, you pay other companies with special dedicated servers that are always running. You give them your files, and they put the files on their huge server to let people access it. Now, of course, you don't want to go around telling people the server's IP or, telling them to search up a bunch of numbers to get to your site, because that's just useless and hard to remember. Just imagine having to remember specific set of numbers for each website you visit. So to fix that, we have text URLs, which is a string of characters called a domain. And that people can type in a domain into the browser, and the browser will read that domain and direct you to the IP that's associated with it. So imagine this website, like the one we created just now, this blank website, was called my website. So instead of typing in a bunch of random numbers to get to this website, I'd create a domain and call it whatever I want. So for example, I could call this mywebsite.com and set that mywebsite.com domain to point to those numbers. So when my browser sees mywebsite.com, it'll send you to the computer associated with the IP behind that domain. So when I type in youtube.com, it'll connect to the computer that YouTube's files are hosted on. And when I type tesla.com, it'll connect to another computer where Tesla's website files are hosted on. So that's a bit about that. Kind of went on there for a while. I don't know if that's a good thing, but at least now you should know for the most part how the URL and domain work. Okay, now back to the HTML file. Let's open up VS Code and so we can get started with it. Now, as you can see, since we opened the folder in VS Code in the last video, the HTML file we made is there. Now, one thing I want to go over real quick is file naming convention. HTML file names should always be in lowercase with no special symbols like $signs or slashes and stuff. You should only have letters and numbers, and you're also allowed to have dashes and underscores, which you can use to separate words. So if I had an about me page, I can consider calling it about-me and then .html. Keep in mind, usually you'll be able to see the file name in the URL browser, so don't make it anything too long or weird. Just keep it simple and straightforward. Another thing, your homepage has to have a specific name, and it's called index.html. Basically, what this is when you open your website folder in a browser, index.html is the first web page that is opened up. It's the first page that's opened up. So technically, instead of calling this mywebsite.html, it should actually be index.html. Okay, now that all that is out of the way, what do we do with our HTML file? Because you're probably also eager to actually start doing something, because I've been doing a lot of explaining so far and it's getting boring. And by saying that, I just realized that I'm going to have to talk a little bit more about HTML tags so we can use them to put stuff on our website. Then I promise I'll actually put stuff on our website. So in HTML, we need to structure it with HTML tags. HTML tags are like keywords that tell the web browser how to format and display the content. If you remember from the last video, I explained what the purpose of HTML is, which is to basically tell the web browser where to place things. Now, there's 3 things you should know about HTML tags. Every tag has an opening and closing part to it, and it stores its content in between those 2 tags. Every tag is surrounded with angle brackets, and lastly, every HTML tag is unique and performs a different task. I'm gonna take one of the many HTML tags that exist, and a very common one, which is H1. H1 just means header 1, and it's just large text, like how a heading or a title is. So how do I use the H1 HTML tag to put a heading on my website? Well, remember the 3 points I mentioned earlier. First, every tag is surrounded with angle brackets. So let's just put angle brackets around this. And next, every opening tag has a closing tag with the content in between. So here's how that would look. VS Code automatically creates the closing tag, which is helpful. Once again, we're using VS Codes because it just makes life easier. But now we have 2 HTML tags, and now we can just put our content in between it. So I'll just go in and put my website in the heading, and that's that. Now, one more thing, you actually have to put a / in the ending tag. So that's right here, which again is already done by VS Code. And this just indicates that this is a closing tag. So H1, the opening tag is just surrounded by angle brackets, and the closing tag is also surrounded by angle brackets, but it has a / right there. Now we can save this. As you can see, the little circle, and I hover over it, it turns into an X, but that little circle just means that this file is not saved. So we can just hit File and hit Save, or we can just press Control S on your keyboard, and it'll turn from a circle to an X. That's how you know the file is saved. So we can go ahead into our File Explorer and open this HTML file. So if you double click, as you can see, we now have a heading that says my website. It looks ugly, of course, but later on we'll style this with CSS. Anyways, let's go back and add another tag. This time, another very popular tag, the paragraph tag, which is just the letter P. And of course, it's surrounded with angle brackets. Surrounded with angle brackets. And once again, VS Code automatically creates the closing tag. Now let's put a little paragraph. A paragraph tag is basically just small text. And we can put in here, welcome to my website. And then once again, hit save. And if we go back to our website, just refresh the page, a paragraph tag or like small text that says, welcome to my website. So finally, we put something on our website, which is exciting. And from here on out, we're just going to be putting more on it. So that's it for now. In the next video, I'm going to talk about more about how we need to structure the HTML document and how we're supposed to structure all the tags.